Welcome to Self-Care from the Inside Out for Moms. I'm your host, Carrie McFarland, a certified life coach and founder of Moms Love Coaching. I help moms put themselves first to stop burnout. If you're a mom who is exhausted from carrying the load of getting it all done, then you are officially invited to join the conversation every week. It's the perfect time to take a break, grab your coffee, and focus on the most important person in your life, you. Welcome, everybody, to Self-Care for Moms, a place where stressed out and overwhelmed moms can come to improve their life and reclaim their time and be happier. That's our goal. So moms can be happier.
I like it.
We want happy moms. So I will just start, and this is actually relevant to the topic that we're talking about today. So bear with me. This weekend, we went to our town's annual fall fair. Say that 5 times fast. Annual fall fair. And this year, it was terrible. I'm so disappointed. It was terrible. They didn't have most of the vendors that they have. And I'm sure it all has to do with people like food vendors and things and the entertainment that they have, that people are raising their prices and they can't afford it. But they changed their pricing structure for the vendors that come in to sell things. And so there were less people selling things. It was more informational booths, and there wasn't as much foot traffic. It wasn't the same fair that we have had for the past 20 some years that I've lived there. Every year it's been good, except for 1 year where it got rained out, but that wasn't their fault. That's the only other time where I felt really disappointed about the fair, but it was because of the weather. I was just sad that, thinking back at all the other fairs that we've gone to, and we've brought our kids there since they were little, they've kind of grown up with this fair, and every year it's just been fun. It's been this family tradition that we've had throughout. And this year it was just all different, and it was just sad and disappointing. And I just, it made me think about, times past, right? Times gone by. What's that phrase? Years gone by, time gone by. And thinking about little kids and how they grow up. And it's sad. It's sad when you realize that your kids were little, right? And when they're little, they're a certain way. They're just, aside from all the things that are difficult about little kids, right? There's all these things that are nice and cute and loving about little kids, and how they run up to you because they're so excited to see you, and they give you hugs, and they want to snuggle with you, and they want you to read to them, and you can do craft time with them, or you can take walks with them, and everything is brand new. They're so excited about things, all those little things, right, that just kind of fade away as they get older. And I don't know about you, Angie, but for me, that just makes me sad. It just makes me sad to think about my kids were little and now they're not, and they'll never be little again. I feel like kids have like a core personality throughout their whole life, but there are a lot of things that change, and it's almost like the little person that you knew as a baby, as a toddler, as a preschooler, they're just a completely different person when they're, say, middle school, high school, college, adult. They're just a totally different person. And mom is left to get reintroduced to this person in every single milestone. And I don't think that we as moms talk about that transition, or although those many transitions, I don't think we talk about it enough, because I know for me, it's not like I don't want my kids to grow up and move on from me and have happy lives of their own. But at the same time, it is also very sad to me that they used to be these little babies, little toddlers, little preschoolers, just like they're just little, right? So it's just sad to me. It's sad to me that those times are gone and we never get them back. So what do you think?
I think, like, I was introduced to scrapbooking when my older daughter was an infant, and she was a baby that came along quite was a surprise. We weren't preventing it, but my oldest child was 12 when she was born. So we had no idea that we could, really have another child. And so she was quite a surprise and a welcome surprise. And we just loved having her. And then, of course, I say my youngest daughter is like the icing on the cake. Like if my first daughter was the cake, my second daughter was the icing on the cake. Because again, we didn't know that. Like I had newfound fertility when I was in my late 30s. I turned 40 a few months after my youngest was born. And coincided with this new way of scrapbooking that I learned about. As an avid photographer, I got my first camera, my first fancy camera was a high school graduation gift. I really was into, taking photos when my older daughter was a baby. But the last year that I scrapbooked a ton was 2009, and that was
Mm.
the year that my youngest was 5 and my older one was 7. And I think that one of the reasons that I stopped was because elementary school years, they don't seem to go as fast as the preschool years and the infant years. You can get into the elementary years and then things seem to slow down. But I realized that when they got to be in high school and they needed me less is when time started to speed up again. And I felt like there was this graspiness to their childhood that I couldn't get myself to feel like I was in front of it. And I think part of what motivated me to want to take all those pictures and tell all those stories and was to make their childhood last longer. And it
Mhm.
became a feeling like it was so impossible to keep up with that I just felt like I needed to stop because it was bringing up a lot of sadness and a lot of guilt, frankly, that I was not capturing and not really truly enjoying what was in front of me. And I think that part of the way to counter that feeling, because you could get into that melancholy and that sadness. Oh my goodness, my kids have grown up so fast. And especially when they graduate from high school and then have their first children and or graduate from college, whatever, move away, move out. But to be grateful for what you did do. Because I think it's easy to go down that sad and guilty and regret, like, "Oh, I wasn't the best mom I could have been. I wasn't the best capturer of their stories." And, I mean, I feel like I'm doing that now with my grandchildren. Like, I'm not appreciating them enough now at this age. Like, it's a scarcity mindset. Time is too short, and there's not enough time, and it really feels awful.
I like that you said graspy because that is what it feels like. It feels graspy when you are trying to remember and capture in a way, like you said, with scrapbooking to try
Mhm,
to chronicle your kids' lives like that.
mhm,
And it sounds like, oh, that's a fun thing, scrapbooking, but it's a job to do that
mhm.
in the way that I think that most of us want to do it. So you have the very beginning of their lives all the way up to when they graduate high school and college and things like that. And it's I think it takes well, I'll speak for myself. It takes a toll on me when I look back and all those memories start flooding in because that's basically what it is because you're forcing yourself to go back and relive those moments. And when you see a photograph of something, most of the time, you don't just remember the smiley faces of the photograph, you remember the whole scenario. And so some of those photographs they look great, but the behind the scenes of that picture was, maybe you yelling at the kids to come over because you need to take a picture and they don't want to and you want to capture the moment and they don't care and so it turns into this big thing and then your husband's not taking the picture right and he needs to take it better blah blah blah,
Yeah.
like you remember that whole thing about it, but it also brings back all those memories of when they were little, and then the immediate thought is they'll never be that little again. And
Mhm,
can I just tell you, this just popped in my head. When I see on Instagram or Facebook the whole thing about you only have 18 summers with your kids. Can we just stop that, please? Like,
Uh,
talk about pressure.
exactly.
Thanks a lot. Like,
It's
stop
it
it.
it's a reinforcement of the guilt and the
Yeah.
regret, like, I'm not appreciating this time enough. I'm not enough, basically. It goes right down to the "I'm not enough"
Yeah.
shame spiral. Yeah, I've noticed that too. And yes, you wanna remind me gently that, I want to be present for my children, but it's not just 18 years, it's a lifetime,
It
and,
is a lifetime.
um, we've romanticized childhood too as a
That
culture,
yes, that is
and,
true.
that also is another opportunity for us to place shame on parents, both moms and dads alike, right? It doesn't feel good. So thank you for
Mm.
pointing that out because you're right. It just makes you feel like, "Oh my gosh, nothing I am ever gonna do is ever gonna be enough because time's gonna go by, and oh my gosh, they're gonna be grown-ups and they're gonna move away from me and never see them again."
Yeah,
What?
right. Yeah, like you said, it's that graspy time scarcity mindset
Yeah,
that you're always running out of time when it comes to your kids. They'll never be this little again, right? I
right.
mean, remember the Carter's commercial? Now we're dating ourselves, but the
You'll have to remind me.
oh, what is the phrase? It's something about they'll I can see it in my mind and I can hear the little jingle, but something about the Carters wearing out, they'll
Yeah,
always be little. I don't know. I'll
yeah.
find it.
Have to
I'll
look
put it
it up.
on the show notes, but it's an old commercial and it's basically what we're talking about in terms of oh, if they could just stay little until their Carters wear out. That's what it
Oh,
is.
yes, that
Remember
was
that?
it. Yep.
That's what it was. Yes, and it was this little jingle, and it was kind of this melancholy little sad I'll have to find it. I'll put it in the show notes. It's a very old commercial. It's very old. But anyway, it's that time scarcity. You're running out of time with your kids. And so every single moment needs to be filled up with happy, special memories that you'll cherish forever. That's just not how life works. You're gonna have days where you're yelling at your kids. And I actually found out a very interesting thing for those of you who maybe either just yell or yell at your kids more often than you want to. And I will be the first to say, and if you've listened to this, you know, I'm very honest about that I yelled at my kids all the time. It was part of the reason I got into coaching, honestly, is because I feared I was starting to ruin my relationship with my kids and it was just becoming out of control. But here's what I learned, and I need to research more about this. And I think I'm either going to do a course or a podcast about this, that yelling helps to reset your vagus nerve, which is the nerve that controls your nervous system, basically. So, has yelling, talking, humming, singing has a property about it, or it stimulates your vagus nerve in a way that it does reset your nervous system, and so it regulates you.
Yeah.
So, and that's what the yelling you're dysregulated, and so your response is yelling. Now, that is probably not the action that you want, and it's probably not going to get you to the result that you want. But my point is that is why that need comes up so strongly, is because your body is trying to regulate itself, and that's what it's doing.
That's the other reason why it's hard to catch it because it's very much, think about it. When you're a baby, you got an impulse and like, if it was a negative impulse, you cried and that reset
Yes.
helped you to well, it was like some offloading had to happen before you could get reset. So I don't know
Right.
if there's science around that. It sounds like there should be.
I
It's
think it
that's according to Angie and Gary.
yes. Well, I mean, so the reason that I saw that is because I was doing some research on the vagus nerve and I saw something that said humming and singing can help you to basically help reset yourself, help calm yourself down, help calm your nervous system. And I was like, well, that's a voice thing. So if you can do that by humming, your body doesn't know if, I mean, seems well, humming is a different frequency. But anyway, it made me think like yelling must do the same thing. You're
Mhm.
still, stimulating that area by emitting sound, right?
Mhm.
So I looked it up, and sure enough, that's what the little bit of research that I read about it. Now it was very, very little, but I want to look into that further. So anyway, for those of you who are yellers and don't want to be yellers, it's part of your body's way of helping you to regulate yourself. So now you know why that's kind of like
Mhm.
the go-to. So anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. Sorry about that, but it felt like it was relevant because, you look back on the things that you've done and, maybe you didn't handle something as well and maybe you yelled or, maybe you could have been more attentive at some point or, there's a million things that we all could have done better, but the fact is that we didn't. We did it the best that we could at the time with the information that we
Mhm.
had and the circumstances that were around us, and that was the best, and so whatever happened, happened. You can't change that, and so because you can't change it, there's no sense in getting regretful about it. Now, I know that's easier said than done, but those are all the things that come up when you're looking at those old pictures or thinking about your kids when they're little, and I just don't think that there is a big platform for moms to talk about that. And without people saying, oh, well, that's just, you knew what was going to happen when you had kids. They grow up. That's what kids do. Right. And all that stuff that people say. But that doesn't really help you in the moment when you're feeling that way, when you're feeling sad and a little heartbroken that your little tiny baby is gone.
Yeah, I think it's finding that balance of being a little uh having some melancholy, thinking back and having the warmth of having those memories and and sitting in the gratitude of that, right? Not in the regret of it, because you can very easily go to the regret side. I didn't do this, I should have done that, and gosh forbid you're going through some sort of chronic illness during their infancy or mental health issue or family stuff, then I mean, I imagine that for folks that are in that situation, when they think back and can't remember huge tracts of time. It must induce, it could very, I could see how it could very easily induce some anxiety. Things are going so fast. I missed that part. I missed so much already, blah, blah, blah. So I was listening to our coach last week, and she was saying, it's not that those feelings aren't real or that you don't want to look at those feelings sometimes, but it's not useful after a point. It just doesn't serve you after a point. And it's finding where that point is. It's like not sitting there and dwelling in it and really making yourself feel really bad. Why? Because why? There's nothing about the past that you can fix except for the way you think about it. And that is all in what you do in that moment. And thinking about, if that's not who I want to be showing up moving forward, then I can make some changes to
Yeah.
be more present, to be more, to say yes more, to make more of an effort, that sort of thing. But
Mhm.
it's just not useful for us to sit in those bad feelings. And Carrie and I have talked about this idea of looking back at photos and not wanting to look at photos because they make us sad, but then we're not printing them off. And like, I have a photo collage. I'm in my room with photo collages. I think they all seem to sort of stop after 2009. I have a few
Yeah.
upstairs where the kids are a little bit older, but I'm like, I don't have any pictures of the new grandbabies. I don't have any pictures of my children as adults now because it makes me sad. But then I'm like, but how do they know that this is their place too? Like, what's the important of those photos? Taking that, sitting in that regret isn't making me come downstairs and find those photos and print some to put on my walls. And then,
Right.
which would be a way to really honor that time and honor that past, and decide that I want to think about the past from a place of gratitude and, yeah, maybe a little bit of sadness, because that sadness tells me how important it was to me, how
Mhm.
important it was at that time in my life, and also to tell myself that I did the best I could,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Because telling
Yeah.
yourself you didn't is not helpful.
No, it is not helpful, and then you're just beating yourself up at that point, right? And
Right.
so that isn't helpful. But I will say I agree with you, the dwelling in it is where where it tips, where the problems start coming in, where you do feel bad about yourself and you do start beating yourself up. That's dwelling in it. But I do think an important piece of moving on from those sad feelings is to acknowledge that it is sad. Right? I mean, I'll never be able to hold my babies again because they're
Right,
not babies anymore.
right.
So I think it's okay to recognize that as sad, feel it so you can move on from it. Full
Right.
disclosure, I have not been able to do that fully because, as we mentioned before, I have a hard time looking at old pictures. I don't like looking at baby pictures because it makes me sad. So I haven't fully done that yet. And that
It's a
is
processing. It's
it
processing
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Each stage they go through, you
Yep.
have to go through that getting to acceptance,
Yep.
and acceptance can hurt.
Yes. Yes, it can because you're acknowledging that it won't ever be that way again.
Yeah,
And then you're just accepting it.
I think
And
it's
it
that
is
grief,
hard.
right? It goes
Yeah.
with grief and
It's
loss and
yeah.
all that. Um,
I think it is a type of grief. But I want to acknowledge that when you're looking back at your life with your kids when they were little and realizing that that time has passed and now it's not as if you're not grateful for the child that you have now, and it's not as if you're not proud, and it's not as if you don't want them to continue to become their own person and move on and build their own life. It's a separate thing from that, but there is an acknowledgement of a type of grief knowing that you had a little child that you took care of who was a certain way, and you could um hold them and snuggle with them and all that. And now you can't because they're older and, quite frankly, teenagers don't want you to touch them. So, or look at them.
Carrie, have you heard of the concept foreboding joy? Brene Brown has written about it.
I don't think so.
And that foreboding joy is that feeling like you're looking at your infant peacefully sleeping in the crib, and then you get a flash of something horrible happening to
Oh,
them.
yes, 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 yes.
And she said, I'm going to read a quote: scarcity and fear drive foreboding joy. We're afraid our feelings of joy won't last or that it won't be enough. If the opposite of scarcity is enough, then practicing gratitude is how we acknowledge that there's enough and that we are enough. So I was looked that up because I know that that feeling of foreboding joy can be so powerful. Being able, like, I recognize it now since I learned about that, I don't know, several years ago, that she was talking about it. It's really that awareness of saying, okay, this is a natural thing when you choose to love another person. It's a natural thing, especially the little people that we have in our lives, and they grow up and they change and they become these adults. And even as awesome as you think they are not who they were when you had to attend to their every need. And it is such a beautiful thing that our brains can't take it. Brains say, we can't take this. So we have to invent some sort of problem that's going to happen. That's that foreboding joy.
Yeah.
So, recognizing it for what it is, it really helps because it is, it can, I am prone to anxiety. And when I start getting those kinds of feelings that it can put me on an anxiety spiral, right?
Hmm.
That don't feel good.
No, that
So,
doesn't feel good at all. That
so
does
it's a
not feel good
blessing.
at all.
Like, it's a blessing and a curse, right?
Yep. Yep.
To
So,
have children, to have children.
yeah. End of sentence.
Yes. I mean, this
Um,
podcast is for moms.
Yes, exactly. So you're a mom, if you know, you know, right? We see that all
Right.
over now. If you
Yeah.
know, you know.
Right.
Yeah, I know that I struggled a lot with feeling guilty that I was feeling that way, that I was
Mm,
feeling sad, and then feeling shame because when I expressed it, people would say things like, well, what's the alternative? Things like that. Or you don't
right.
want
Right.
your kids to
Right.
grow up. And it's like, no, that's not what I mean. I just think it's important for moms to talk about
Yeah.
all the things because I don't think that we do all the time. I think we're getting better at it. We're
Yep.
getting better at it, but I don't think we talk about, like, all the things because we're afraid that people are gonna judge us and we're gonna feel shame or they're gonna shame us or, So I just want you to know that if you are feeling that way, it's perfectly normal and there's nothing wrong with you. It is a sad thing, and what we don't want to do is like what we were saying before, we don't want to dwell in it and have it have a negative effect on our lives in terms of, we don't want it to be debilitating.
Right.
So, but we do want to acknowledge that it's real. And really, the fastest way to get through something like that is to just allow it to be there and feel it and not resist it because the dwelling comes from the resisting it. I shouldn't be feeling this way, so I'm not going to feel this way. So it never quite goes away. And as we're talking about this, I feel like that's where I'm kind of stuck still. I'm stuck in the resisting part of it because um, I don't want to feel that way.
Right.
I don't want to feel sad and heartbroken about my kids not being little anymore,
Yeah.
And so I avoid it and I'm still feeling it.
And you're still feeling it,
And
and you're
I'm
probably
still
feeling
feeling
it
it. Yeah.
worse.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, I just wanna give moms the permission to feel what they're feeling without guilt, without shame, without judging themselves, without beating themselves up. It's
Yeah,
just you feel what you feel and nothing is wrong with it.
that's right.
That's it.
That's what it's all about,
Yep, exactly.
giving yourself grace and compassion.
Yeah, and we need a lot of it, and not a lot of people are gonna do that for us, so we gotta do that for
Gotta do
ourselves.
it for yourself, for
Yeah,
sure.
for sure, for
Sure.
sure. Okay. Well, I think we're gonna leave it there. I hope everybody has a wonderful week. Go look at those old pictures and
I
just
dare
feel
you.
sad. I'll look at some of mine.
Let
Maybe
it wash. I mean, maybe the sadness too is like the doorway into the gratitude, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. There's always better on the other side, but going through the middle of it is the toughest part.
Right.
So I maybe what I'll do is I will find some old pictures and go through them and post a couple. I'll go through it with you people.
You go. Be brave, Carrie. You can do it.
Thank you. I will be brave. All right, everybody. That is what we got, and we will see you next week. Have a wonderful week.
Have a wonderful week, everyone.
Thank you so much for listening today. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world to us if you like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. This makes it easier for everyone to find us and helps us spread our message about self care from the inside out. Have a wonderful week, and remember, making yourself the priority is the highest form of self care.